First, I'd like to thank everybody just for coming. This has been a real honor to be a part of the Loeb Fellow class, the tradition, the network. It's been amazing, and it's only just begun. So I'm just really thankful to be a part of it. I'm Baye, Adofo-Wilson. I am a part of the 2014 class. When I saw the title of our section that Sally and Jim put together, it said Community Power and Leadership. And it was really, it was interesting for me to see it because it was interesting to see that they had placed me and Alexi and Matt in that, with that title. So it made me sort of think about what I did in a way, because oftentimes I don't think about it that way. So this presentation is probably a little bit more about me than I normally do, but I felt like it was important in terms of the continuity of community, and so to talk about the different projects that I've worked on and how they have had an impact on the community and the part of its leadership. So I'm originally from Harlem, but for the most part I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey. Went to junior high school and high school there. After Paterson, I went in the Army. I was stationed for the most part in Fort Richardson, Alaska. And then I came back to school, come back home, and ended up going to Rutgers, Newark. And at Rutgers, Newark is really where a lot of things crystallized for me. I just got out of the Army and was still in the New Jersey National Guard during Desert Storm. And I just remember that when I was in the Army, and I was in field artillery, sort of firing cannons. And I realized that a lot of my friends who were in the military with me, who were in field artillery, who were in infantry, who were in combat engineers, came from post-industrial cities. They came from Paterson, they came from Newark, they came from Harlem, they came from Detroit, Chicago, LA, Oakland. And we were together in different sort of combat scenario fighting, and most of us had gotten there because we were trying to escape poverty and wanted to go to college. And so I realized that so when the war started, it really made me think about sort of my allegiance, my commitment, my history, the history of the communities that I'm from, and the history of the communities that my friends are from. And would they have made those same decisions if their communities had given them more options? And so I ended up, sort of being an anti-war activist, still in the Guard, and sort of organizing events and protests around the war. And that was while I was in Newark. And so that plus classroom sort of put me in a space where I ended up being more of an activist than anything else. Decided that I wanted to have more of a productive way of addressing problems. And so that led me to urban studies and urban planning. And applied to the program at Cornell, got in, had sort of a transformative experience there too. It was sort of my first collegiate experience, because when I was at Rutgers Newark, I essentially worked in school full time as sort of an urban campus, where at Cornell I was sort of embedded in the culture. And I was really also just appreciative too. Like I had 2 months from going to college, I was still jumping out of airplanes. And then I graduated from college and I have a fellowship at Cornell. So like the experience that happened for me sort of took me from being, just sort of one, just no different than any of the other inner city kids that were up, and then I sort of had this fellowship to an Ivy League institution. And so I was really appreciative. Sort of ironically, my TA, my first semester for the built environment was Ann Forsyth. Sort of how small the world is. That was 20 years ago. And then I went to law school just because I wanted to have the capacity to implement the ideas. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do if planning would do that. I was a staff attorney in legal services representing nonprofit organizations, but that too, that's a much longer story. But for the most part, I was there helping organizations who were getting started, but then also realized that there was just only so much you can do in the context of legal services framework. So a friend of mine came up to me, essentially my mentor, and said, there's this job at RPA. You're really a policy guy anyway, why don't you sort of think about applying? And I'd heard of RPA, and I studied Robert Moses, but I was like, okay, it's not necessarily who I am, but let's see if it works. So I got the job at RPA, and my first week at the office, RPA was doing a charrette for the Lincoln Park neighborhood. Rob Lane, who was one of the fellows, was designing it, and essentially the Lincoln Park community was upset because of the building of the Jersey Performing Arts Center. They felt that the city had made a decision to build it. It cost $185 million, and it was built near the highway. It didn't take into consideration a lot of local conditions, and it was just a huge facility. And the city had another facility, and it was the Newark Symphony Hall. The difference is that Newark Symphony Hall was classified as being on the Chitlin Circuit. It was called Shriners. It was built by Frank Grad. The architect was Frank Grad. It had a 2,800 seat, it still has a performance venue, 2,800 seat concert hall, 1,000 seat ballroom. But for the most part, the performers there were African American, and it was the beginnings of places like shows like the early Tyler Perry stuff that was happening. And the issue was that the leadership felt that it was beyond repair, that culturally as well as ethnically, that they wanted something new for Newark, and they also didn't want it to just be about Newark, and they wanted it to be about the state of New Jersey. And so there was a conflict that, well, this was considered, sort of a space that was too black, and in the neighborhood, and the other part of it, which is a very real part of it, is that it was owned by the city and managed by the city. And the administration used it as a place for sort of patronage. Folks who worked good on campaigns would end up going over to work at Newark Symphony Hall. And they didn't necessarily have an opportunity, they didn't really have the skill sets to actually run the performance portion of it. They never really took it sort of that seriously. But the Lincoln Park neighborhood was much bigger than just Newark Symphony Hall. The neighborhood was on the National State Historic Register. 2 governors had lived in the neighborhood, the founders of Prudential, the founders of PSC and G. It was a historic neighborhood that is as old as the city. The neighborhood, the Lincoln Park, at one time was called South Park, and it was the southern boundary of the city in 1666. But as the city became, and I can see it was always sort of segregated, but in this situation, they had sort of broke up the neighborhoods in ethnic groups. They sort of identified where everyone was living. And it was interesting because the neighborhood between World War I and World War II, and even before in this neighborhood, had become black. So so this part is Lincoln Park, and the end is Negroes, tell you who lived in the neighborhood. And this is sort of the ethnic breakdown of where different groups live. So Lincoln Park was already a black community by 1911. In that, it had this cultural history. Newark was a pianist town. Jazz between World War I and World War II, people had all these different clubs. This club is at 375 Washington Street. Today, my office is at 450. It was this was one of the spaces in the city where black folks had a place to go to hang out and have a good time and learn the craft. Its proximity to New York always made it a place where you can go in and out and sharpen your craft. And so people did that, and people came and they enjoyed themselves and they entertained themselves. So this, as you see, the admissions was 25 cents, and you had 20 artists, and it was a good time. But like all neighborhoods, Newark this neighborhood had hit bottom at some point, and they called it the bottom. And I just feel like when a neighborhood in Newark that they call the bottom means something. And so what happened was in the 1960s and 70s, drug treatment programs moved into the neighborhood. They occupied the brownstones, the existing brownstones that were built in the 1850s, and they converted them into drug treatment programs. So it became essentially a neighborhood of healing, but it also attracted drugs, and it also attracted crime. As a part of the RPA staff, we did the neighborhood participatory planning process. It lasted 4 years. Every second Tuesday, every month, we would meet, we would have just idea sessions, and we would talk about what we wanted to happen in the neighborhood. We did charrettes, we did walking house tours, we did concerts, we did a whole host of activities that, for the most part, was advocacy. But it really was creating a framework and a foundation for the ideas that we are employing today. And these are sort of different issues: historic preservation, diversity, cultural awareness, economic opportunity. But for me, I was an activist. And so after we finished the neighborhood plan, we submitted it to the city, and I went back to doing activist work. It was called the Left RPA, and I had been working on 2 different projects. I was working on a project called Black August, which was about freeing U.S. political prisoners and prisoners of war, and really raising the money for their families. People you may have heard of, like Asada Shakur, Umi Abu Jamal, and I got really into this because of the war, but also just trying to navigate the streets. I mean, stop and frisk for me was always really real. It was always something that was a challenge, was navigating public spaces, and it was personally hurtful because I was a veteran. I was like, okay, I done fought for this country, and I can't walk down the street. And even before that, like I grew up in Patterson, but we didn't have that many facilities, so I lived next to this town, about 3 blocks away from this town, called Fairlawn. And Fairlawn was next to Patterson. And the neighborhood that was in Fairlawn that was next to Patterson is Radburn. And so we would go over to Radburn, or you planners, we would go to Radburn to play basketball. And they would escort us out of Radburn. And they would have a police car at the bridge as we would go in to make sure we didn't get in. So I was like, I'm more organized than this. The other things I did was a national political convention. We did voter registration, get out the vote. Part of this had to do with George Bush. But we registered 300,000 people to vote. 16 states we did GOTV. Back in 2008, young people really wasn't voting. So at that point, we got more people beginning to vote. So what ends up happening after that is that the neighborhood plan gets adopted. And I really believe in the project. I believe that the project is important, and I say, and instead of just going on the national scene and do electoral politics, I decide that I want to go back to Lincoln Park. We get the plan adopted, and we work with some architects to really get going. But this is when things get interesting, and essentially we develop a neighborhood plan, a plan for one project. This is just an old schematic, but we develop a plan for a project, and we do our sort of normal community participation planning, and we go to the city for the land, and the city says, well, one of the developers that came to your meeting asked for the same plot of land that you asked for, and has the same concept that you have for the project. And so we were like, well, we had it first. They said, well, you got to figure it out. We went to the New York City Council, and at the time, the mayor wanted the arena. So the council was really upset that the mayor wanted the arena and didn't, and he would be in strong arm to do it. So when the city did the neighborhood redevelopment plan, they had all these lots that were city owned. They asked us if we wanted it, and I said, yeah, we'll take it. And they said, well, we're going to make you a black developer. You're going to make a developer in the city. I said, okay. And that's what it is. And they gave us, and we got the land. They put our project on the agenda the same day the arena was on the agenda. So they said if it's going to be yes for the arena, everybody else is going to be yes. The developers haven't spoken to me since. So we started designing projects. We started going through designs. designing projects. All our projects were green. We were, and we started building too. We just started coming up with different concepts and different designs for projects. Then the market collapses, and we have all these projects that are sort of middle of the ground. We have 6 projects in construction, 4 with completed construction documents. We have bought the land for $4 a square foot, financed, and they were appraised at $40. We were using the equity to finance it. So we had all these loans that were due with no projects completed. We refinanced, we refinanced it, and we sort of finished the projects. But while we were trying to finish it up, we had done green jobs on all of our projects. Because we were the first ones to do green jobs in the city of Newark, we trained people on our projects. That allowed them to have early training in the field, and we had our own construction company. So we were able to place 95% of the graduates of the program. We were a DOL, Green Jobs Training Provider, and we did energy auditing and weatherization for the city. We did urban farming too on our sites during that period of time. We did the CSA. We grew actually with people who lived and worked in the neighborhood. But at the same time, we started something really important, and that's the Lincoln Park Music Festival. We just believed that music was a part of the neighborhood. Newark had this rich history, and we just wanted to make sure that we honored it. These are all the different flyers for the Lincoln Park Music Festival that we've done over the years. Just one through 8. We did skateboarding camps for kids. It was great. It really wasn't that much of a skateboard culture in Newark, so we did it. This is the mayor, Crazy Legs. We did hip hop and jazz. And this is our house music. These are the people. I really wish I could claim credit for this, but I didn't. Newark had this really rich history of house music, and because of that, when we switched that, I was in the hip hop and punk. One of my staff members said it should be house, and so once we did that, it just really changed the dynamic of everything that was happening there. We went from 3,500 people to 15,000, and then after that, it's gotten to 50 to 60,000 people. These are some of our first projects that we completed, interior floor plans. We do living walls, there's strawberries, lavender, kiwi, chamomile, on our projects. I put this in here because these are some of the buildings that we had that were, there's 4 buildings that had completed construction documents that weren't completed when the market collapsed. We were able to get funding through the program that called the shovel ready projects that came from the stimulus package. Because we had completed construction documents, we were able to go on construction for 100 days. We were able to move artists into all these buildings. This is our last project. It's a restoration of church facade, built in 1851, 1861. Abraham Lincoln spoke there. We're restoring it into an outdoor performance venue. The farm's going to be there. We'll put the towers back on. It's an important project because it's going to be the center of food and performance. This is the current status. We built 100 units, $3 million worth of real estate. We've had 8 music festivals. 50,000 people come. We've trained 150 people. Most of them have jobs. The neighborhood's really changed a lot, as you can read. It's just a lot happened. We have another 40 units in our development project. I just heard 2 days ago that the mayor just bought a house in Lincoln Park. So it's just changing. The challenges though is that City Hall still looks the same. It's still where it's at. And this is why I'm here, to reevaluate and recharge, study urban theory, and study architect and urban design. I don't really know, like I get these conversations with architects all the time, and I don't know if I'm being instructive enough. So I'm like, oh, we have a lot, it's like 100 by 200, and like, go figure it out. And so I feel like it doesn't really, that's not what really happens. And this is the future. I really feel like we should be reimagining and redeveloping historically Black communities. This is what I want to do. I don't know how many more place-based strategies I got in me, but but I can do some private place work. So I also want to do that. So that's it. Thanks a lot.